What's good, everybody? This is CP and welcome back to my Budget Sleepers Fantasy Basketball series. Last time I talked about scoring and points and identified a couple of affordable options you might want to add to your fantasy teams. Today I will deep dive into some more fantasy stats and help you identify potential players you might want to pick up for good value in the next little while. So let's not waste any more time and Starting with assists, the last time I checked there are only 6 players in the NBA averaging more than 8 assists per game right now. So this makes it one of the more rare fantasy categories in fantasy basketball this year. And if you look at the names in the top 10, it's safe to say that most of these players are probably rostered in all of your leagues. So simply put, if you didn't draft for assists, the only way you might be able to improve in this category is to trade for them. And out of everyone on this list, I think 2 of the cheapest targets to acquire right now are Draymond Green and TJ McConnell. And starting with Draymond Green, he's not the triple-double machine he once was, but surprisingly, he's having a little bit of a bounce back year this year in fantasy basketball. As you can see from the stats, I would consider him as a sneaky elite fantasy player to target for assists right now, as he's a top 6 player in this category. And overall, it's safe to say that his minutes are pretty much guaranteed in the Warriors rotation, as we are seeing him average close to 30 minutes a night. Besides that, the Warriors are using him as a point forward again this season, so if the shooters around Draymond are knocking down their shots, then Draymond shouldn't have too much problems giving you at least 6 to 8 assists on an ordinary night. And from the looks of it, it seems like the Warriors will be battling for a playoff spot until the end of the season, so as long as Draymond can stay healthy, I have a hard time seeing his role change, as they will likely try to keep him on the floor for as much as possible. Besides that, obviously one of the biggest knocks on Draymond's fantasy game is his inability to score a lot of points, so if you were to pick him up or trade for him, you shouldn't expect him to score more than 8 points for you on a normal night. However, he's one of the rare fantasy power forwards who can give you over 10 assists on a good night. So for example, if your team already has a dominant assist player like James Harden, Luka, Trae Young, or Chris Paul, then adding Draymond into the mix can really make your team OP. Besides that, it looks like Draymond's blocks, steals, and rebounds are coming back a bit this season. And in addition to that, he can occasionally give you a few triples as well, so this actually makes him one of the more versatile but budget sleepers to trade for or pick up down the stretch. Moving on, TJ McConnell of the Indiana Pacers could be another sneaky player to go after if you need assists. He's averaging a career high of 6.8 assists right now and seems to have found a role in Indiana. So far, they have been giving him around 23 minutes a night, and it looks like he is one of the Pacers' primary ball handlers besides Malcolm Brogdon. Personally, I like McConnell as a stash in most standard leagues, especially if you have an extra spot, because with Oladipo gone and with players like Karis LeVert and TJ Warren hurt, the Pacers actually don't have that many ball dominant players on their rosters. So with that in mind, TJ should continue to be given opportunities to handle the ball and to create plays. And like Draymond Green, I would consider McConnell as another punt points guy. And you should only really roster him if you want elite numbers in assists and steals. The last time I checked, he's the 10th best player in assists, averaging just shy of 7 assists per game. But compared to all the other players on the top 10 list, I think he's probably one of the easiest ones to trade for. And if you're lucky, you might be able to find him on the waiver wire in some of your leagues. So if you feel like your team needs help in dimes, then I think TJ McConnell is one of those cheap budget players you should go after. Going further down the list, I think a name like Ricky Rubio of the Minnesota Timberwolves might be another good player to consider for a cheap source of assists. Because the last time I checked, Rubio is a top 20 player in this category and is averaging a little over 6 assists per game so far this season. And the interesting thing is that he's averaging more assists than some big name players with more playing time, including Steph Curry, Chris Middleton, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So having a player like Rubio definitely makes a difference in the dimes category, especially in deeper 12 and 14 team leagues. Rubio is obviously not a must roster player in my opinion, but the one thing I like about him is that he doesn't need a lot of playing time to produce assists. He's averaging less than 25 minutes a night and has been able to give his owners around 6.2 per game. In addition to that, on nights when D'Angelo Russell is out or when the Minnesota Timberwolves decide to rest him, I feel like Rubio has the upside to give you around 8 to 10 assists per game and be a huge difference maker for your teams during close weeks where you need those extra 5 to 10 assists to get by. Going even deeper down the list, I think a name like Tyus Jones of the Memphis Grizzlies might be worth an ad for assists. So far this season, he is averaging a career high at around 5.5 per game and has been a top 30 fantasy player in this category. So obviously he benefited and went on a nice little run when Ja Morant went down with an injury. And now since Morant is back, we can expect Jones' number to take a little bit of a hit. But nonetheless, he's still the backup point guard in Memphis, and as long as they continue to give Jones around 20 to 24 minutes a night, I feel like he still has the ability to give you over 5 assists per game when he's playing to his potential. Obviously, the scoring upside isn't there for Jones, but he is also averaging over 1.2 steals per game so far, so in my opinion, he's not a one-trick pony and holds a little bit more value than most people think, especially in deeper leagues. I feel like if you need those stats, then Jones might be a very cheap budget sleeper to go after. Moving on to steals, this is another very interesting fantasy category, and the last time I checked, only 8 players in the NBA is averaging over 1.5 steals per game so far this season. And if you take a look at the top players on this list, you can see something very interesting in that there's definitely a few names that not many people expect to see on here. To me, one of the biggest surprises is a name like TJ McConnell of the Indiana Pacers. Despite his limited playing time and limited scoring upside, the stats show that he has been a top 3 player in this category and is considered an elite name to go after for steals. As I said before, he's not the most well-rounded fantasy player to go after. It might not be the best player to go after if you want scoring on your team, but compared to other elite players in the steals category like Kawhi, Ben Simmons, and Fred VanVleet, TJ McConnell might be one of the most affordable players to trade for, and if you're really lucky, he might still be available on the waiver wire in some of your leagues. Going down the list, another name I like is Robert Covington of the Portland Trail Blazers. Obviously, he's not the best player to target if you need scoring, but besides that, I think he holds a lot of value if you're looking for a player that can give you elite numbers in steals with the ability to average around 6 rebounds and give you almost 2 triples and half a block a game. On top of that, his minutes has been pretty consistent in Portland, averaging over 30 minutes a night. So compared to others on this list, I like Covington's average playing time as it seems to be the most consistent. And moving down the list, I think a name like LaMelo Ball of the Charlotte Hornets is another sneaky good player to consider as well, as he is barely into his rookie season and is already a top 10 player in steals. In a way, I feel like he's going to continue to improve and have an even bigger second half. Granted that the Hornets might continue to increase his playing time and give him more time to develop on the floor. So realistically speaking, I wouldn't be surprised to see him average close to around 30 to 31 minutes to finish off the second half of the season. With that in mind, I think LaMelo could definitely bump up his steal count to around 1.6 or 1.7 a game and possibly finish as a top 5 fantasy player in the steals category. Moving on, Matisse Thybulle of the Philadelphia 76ers is another budget sleeper I really like in the steals category. And quite frankly, if you really wanted to, you probably don't need to spend a lot to get him on your roster. I've actually seen him on the waiver wire in a lot of my leagues because most people aren't attracted to his low scoring and low playing time, but overall his stats has been rather decent considering how he's not a starter in Philly and is averaging just over 17 minutes a night. But somehow he's still managing to hold a top 10 spot in steals, averaging around 1.5 steals per game. At this point, I consider him as a stream option in most of my leagues, but with a little bit of upside in deeper leagues. Namely because Thybulle's upside is crazy when you consider his per 36 minute stats, which sees him average 3.5 steals and 1.7 blocks a game. Realistically speaking, if he was given 36 minutes a night, I'm pretty sure he won't reach those numbers, but overall I would say Thibault reminds me of a player like Chris Boucher of the Toronto Raptors, in that he doesn't need a lot of minutes to contribute in multiple categories. In Thibault's case, if the Sixers do decide to bump up his minutes to around 20 to 23 minutes a night, I can see him averaging closer to 1.9 steals per game and possibly be a surprise player to break into the top 2 for this category. So in my opinion, I think Thibault is someone that I wouldn't mind keeping on my watch list to see if his playing time grows in the coming months. For 15 years of good luck, hit that like button now and activate your good fortunes. Do it now.